The Echo Chamber, brought to you by the Holmes Report and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers. And sponsored by March Communications, connecting innovation and people.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Echo Chamber. This is Arun Sudhaman from the Holmes Report, and we're very lucky today to be joined by Omnicom PR Group CEO Karen van Bergen. Karen, hello.
Hey Arun, great to be here with you.
It's good to have you on the podcast. I think this is the first time?
It is the first time. I didn't know why you didn't ask me before.
Oh, well, you know, we're busy. Certainly not through any want of trying. I think probably just because this is the first time I've been to New York and been able to carve out this much time with you. It's a good week to do this podcast, of course. We've had the results come out from the 2017 calendar year and, of course, for the fourth quarter of the year. Omnicom's results announcement was yesterday.
Yes.
We saw marginal, slight growth from the PR firms in 2017 and in the fourth quarter. How would you characterize last year? It seems to have been quite difficult for many firms.
It was, I think we all agree, it was a difficult year for PR. It was one of the tougher ones that I have experienced. And I think all the holding companies have had, had to put their best foot forward. Under those circumstances, I'm good with the slight percentage growth. You always want to see more, of course, but under the circumstances, I think our agencies have done a marvelous job to toe the line and do exciting work and be rewarded for that.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it was difficult?
As I see it, our industry there's a couple of factors, but if I look at our industry is changing a lot. There's a lot more technology influence. There is changes in the way clients look at our offerings, the different needs from clients. There's a difference in the remuneration system away from more structural retainers to more project-based work. There's a big need for integrated approach. So that's all on the industry side. But also, a lot of the companies that we work for have had tough years, either be it through shareholder activism or other. So I think it's a combination of things. I think also in some economies there's been some political turmoil and waiting to see how things would play out here in the US and in the UK, for example. And I think all of that together has made particularly for global firms, made it a tougher year.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, I suspect it was the toughest year for the PR industry since the financial crisis.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Which is something of a surprise, of course. And yet, when I talk to people this week in New York, and indeed before this week as well around the world, it seems like the gloom has lifted in 2018.
I do. I'm always cautiously positive, but I am cautiously optimistic about this year. I think we have seen first signs of more confidence on the company side, the clients that we work for. We feel that within our group, we've really invested in the right talent and in the right technologies last year to offer the clients what they really need, be it on influencer, be it on reputation management, be it on prices, which still is there, and particularly in a data-driven approach, which makes it more efficient, effective, and also more measurable. So I think we are in a really good position. And on top of that, it is an election year. It's not a presidential election year, but it is an election year, which is always good for our firms.
Do you feel that clients...
In the US, I should say, in the US,
of course. Yes. Do you feel that clients are just less conservative than they were last year?
It's hard to say that for sure because, we just started, but it's hard to imagine that they're going to stay as conservative as they were last year. So I'm optimistic that it'll be a little bit better. But it's up to us to really be those trusted advisors to the clients that are able to build those long-term relationships and continue to grow together. So it's not only on the clients, it's on us as well.
Sure. So it's been 2 years Is that right?
2 years, March 1, it's going to be 2 years.
Wow,
yeah.
okay. And of course the time has flown by, as
yes.
as it always does. How would you say you have changed the way that perhaps Omnicom's PR firms go to market as a collective entity during that period?
Yeah, I think we have seen, and I think one of the most positive surprises for me was that there is such a will to collaborate within the agencies. You know, traditionally there's always been, you know, a lot of competition between all the agencies, but the will to collaborate when it's in the client's interest and when you can do great things together has been really, really mind-blowing. So we've been able to do some fantastic collaboration, and that's ever growing. And I personally love that. I love doing the involvement with clients and building those customized teams for clients, and then keeping close to see how it's going. That's been one of the top priorities. That was also one of the reasons why Omnicom Public Relations Group was formed. And the other thing is the talent mobility, the ability to look at real talent and give them more opportunities outside one agency. And for many of the talent, it's not really relevant. But sometimes you are able to keep a really, really good person and give them a great opportunity, and that opportunity turns out to be a fantastic play for the agency as well.
Okay.
So we've done that, and then of course we didn't do a lot on the acquisition front, but we did Raven Martin, which has been working out really, really well. And I like being cautious. I like looking out for a lot of opportunities, but then when you find the right strategic and cultural fit, it's awesome. And then on the innovation side, which is our fourth growth strategy, we did launch Spry. I leave it always to Spry to give the details because it is really treated as a startup. But that's a great example of a technology innovation. So I think we've done a lot, and going forward, we're going to build on those four strategies. There's nothing is going to change fundamentally.
Okay, sure. We'll talk about Spry a little bit later on. It's interesting, you started with collaboration, and I'm not suggesting that any of your firms might not be collaborative, but I'm curious to know, were you, perhaps when you are confronted with a firm or a CEO who's perhaps less collaborative than you'd like, what is your message to that person, to that business? How do you get them to become more collaborative?
Yeah, I have a very famous saying which comes from the time that I ran One Voice for Philips, and it is, would you rather have 100% of nothing or 50% of a whole lot? And it is very, if it's pretty clear, and we will always talk about it, it's, we do this collaboratively, but when there is an opportunity coming in either with an existing or a new client, we'll look at it. But when we know that we are pretty sure that one agency cannot give the client what the client needs, then we talk about it, and we will. And if somebody doesn't want to play in the end, that will come through in the results, because it is the world of collaboration. And we've seen that the agencies that are the best collaborators have profited the most.
Okay. So you mentioned 4 areas. Do you see anything in particular coming to the forefront in 2018? For example, will you be prioritizing one of those over the others? No. I think we are very, I would almost say, minimalistic and focused on those 4. We can't do one over the other. Talent, if I had to make a choice, it'll always be about talent. And you heard John Rand say that on the call as well. We will always invest in talent, because that is, talent is what our clients buy is a terrible word, but work with, and they want to see great people that they consider their trusted advisors. And so that's what we will always do, but we also need to continue to grow the collaboration. We need to be on the lookout for acquisitions, and we need to continue to focus on innovation, because it's particularly on the role that technology is playing in our industry is going to play. If we don't embrace it, then somebody else is going to do it. And in terms of acquisitions, as you said, I think there's been one, right? Raven Martin. Is there a specific reason why there haven't been more? Is it down to perhaps targets that you have for the kind of profitability of agencies that you'd like to acquire? Is it a slower process because there aren't that many good firms that meet your criteria out there?
It is, I think on our side, it is a very deliberate process. We always say that obviously there needs to be a strategic fit. I mean, it needs to fill a gap, a competency gap or a regional gap. Those are basically the two reasons why we look at acquisitions. And then the biggest thing is it needs to be a cultural fit. Because if those two conditions are met, and of course there needs to be financial health, but there's a lot that you can do if those first two conditions are met. So, but I think we should never underestimate the cultural importance, because we've seen around us and there's been experiences as well. When you don't have the cultural fit, you basically buy an empty box, and that is something we don't do in Omnicom. We really, really value the entrepreneurs who have grown their agencies. We want to stick with them. We want them to stick with us. And help us grow the business together. So yeah, I guess we're pretty critical and careful, but then when it works out really, really well. So that's definitely what we're going to continue.
Are there any specific competencies or specific geographic markets where you're looking to grow via acquisition?
I think, on the competency side, I'm going to hold off on that until we are a little closer. But for sure, it's pretty clear that China is a really, really important area for us. We have a great operation, but I personally love to strengthen China. Yeah.
Is there a particular obstacle in that market? Because it's not as if anyone is making many acquisitions in China at the moment.
I think it's actually. I'm carefully hopeful that it's changed. There's been a time that it was very hard because a lot of the Chinese firms were focused on going IPO or being bought by a Chinese company. I do feel a shift there. I can't sort of put some numbers behind it, but I do feel a shift. And I think, China is such an important market. We always have to be focused on China. And I'm optimistic that something will work out.
I think you're right. I have also sensed something of a shift away from this kind of goal of listing, in particular, which seemed quite popular a couple of years ago. And now there's certainly seems to be more appetite to sell to a foreign
that's
foreign
good
company.
To hear from you as well. But so I'll keep you posted.
You talked about talent, of course. Now, from your perspective, how do you see, and particularly over the last couple of years, how have you seen the talent equation change in PR? I mean, is it as simple as generalist to specialist, traditional to digital, or are there other trends that you'd like your CEOs to be cognizant of?
I think there's a lot of change. We still need people who are really good communication specialists. I think the need for specialization within the communications discipline has grown bigger. The need for people, particularly the more advanced in the career they are, to be, and I use this all the time, but I call this trusted business advisor rather than a brand project manager, is really, really crucial. Understanding the client's business, understanding their numbers, understanding their challenges will give you so much more ground to build a really strong relationship now and in the future. So it's a different skill set sometimes. And you need people who are, I always, particularly at junior level, you have to hire more for character than for aptitude. If you need people who are curious, who are great relationship builders, who would love to understand business, and who are service-minded. I think those are, at a junior level, the key things. Going further, specialization has become more important. If you're not ingrained digital, particularly at an entry level, you're going to have a hard time. But I don't see any young people who are not digital natives. So that's not really an issue. It's probably more for the people at my level to understand. So I think there have been changes, and I always encourage the agencies to look further than the traditional recruiting basis. Look for different college graduates, different professional skills, to create also the other thing that is obviously incredibly important is to not only to create diversity, gender diversity, race diversity, but also diversity of thinking. And I think you get that if you have a different mix of people going into the agency.
Do you think it's happening enough? Do you see that kind of diversity of talent coming into the industry fast enough?
If we talk about diversity of thinking, yes. If we talk about the other diversity, race, gender, no. I think we're still in agreement, in violent agreement, that we're not going fast enough. And it is a big focus, but it's a hard nut to crack long term.
Sure. I mean, we have focused a lot of our time on covering this particular challenge in terms of diversity and inclusion, whether that's gender or racial or in terms of other minority groups. You, of course, now you're a high-profile female CEO. You oversee the largest collectively PR operation. You've made Barry Rafferty the first CEO of a top 5 PR agency. How important a landmark do you think that was?
I think it was incredibly important. I'm a founding member and still board member of Omni Women, the organization within Omnicom that really wants to advance women in leadership positions in Omnicom. And this, and together with the appointment of Wendy Clark at the helm of DDB, has been a real landmark. And it's incredibly important. If we can't even get it right for half the population, then I'm really very pessimistic about what we do further on diversity. So we need to get this right, and I'm very committed to that. I'm also a founding member of She Equality, the group for equality in the PR industry, and I think it's been a landmark. Barry is a phenomenal leader, and I'm really happy that we could make this work.
Why do you think, and we are quite aware of the various reasons, but I'm curious to hear your view. Why do you think there have been so few female CEOs of big PR firms?
It's a combination of things, but ultimately, and my boss always laughs when I say that, but it is, and he's, by the way, he's the big exception to the rule, but white men appoint white men. And it's a simplification, but it is true. It's, you go for what you are familiar with, unconsciously very often. And that coupled with the fact that it's the way of life that in midlife or in mid-career, women are the ones who have to carry the babies and and that's where a lot of women drop off or don't combine, certainly not a career advancement. And I think that's up to us as leaders to have those discussions with women and make sure that we hold on to them and give them flexibility in that time to keep working, but also to take care of their families. And we've had some really great examples in the past of that. I think that really works. It's all a matter of spending some extra time and care to keep talented women on the path to the top. And that's one of the things that Omni Women is working on.
Sure, yeah. I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about Omni Women, because obviously I suspect it's well known to people within Omnicom, but if you could perhaps explain exactly what Omni Women is.
Yeah, so Omni Women is really, in simple terms, it's the organization of senior women in Omnicom who want to advance the professional careers of other women within the network, and we decided to start with our own network. So we do professional gatherings, we do networking, we do mentoring. We have now, this month is the launch of the New York chapter, so we'll have 11 chapters. It's a global organization. The 12th will be in March with Mexico coming on board, so it's really global, Europe, Asia, and the US. And it really, really is aimed at providing skill sets, a sounding board, mentoring to younger women to get them up in the ranks.
Is there anything you've learned from your involvement in Omni Women that surprised you, that's made you actually rethink the challenges perhaps facing women as they try to advance through this industry?
That's a difficult question, whether there was a surprise. I can't think of something that really surprised me. I just think that we need to continue. I think probably the discussion that you always need to have, and we sure have that, is this women only, or how much do we take men along in this on this road? And I think within Omni Women, we feel that we have a task as women to be the sounding board for the other women, but we can't do this alone. So we've had gatherings with male leaders who have made commitments to up the percentages of their female leadership in their organizations. And I think that's probably the discussion: how far do you bring them in, and how not, and what point? But we firmly believe that we have to do this together.
Okay. So you mentioned Omnicom's investment in Spry. So you are in fact the majority owner of Spry, which is a startup that aims to bring clients together with kind of freelance PR talent.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it taps into the gig economy.
Yes.
And on the other, it tries to provide a technological solution to this kind of fast turnaround content requirement. Yeah. Why did you decide to make that investment? What was it about Spry that attracted you?
So, first of all, I'm not going to say too much about Spry, because we've made a very solid agreement that they are being treated as a startup, because I think that's the only way, because if a big holding company gets in the way of a startup, I'm not sure how successful that's going to be. But we firmly believe that there's basic services in our industry that are going to be eroded by technology. You already see it with the financial press releases that are basically done by robots in many cases. And we also have seen a couple of things. We've seen that there's a lot of clients who cannot afford the services of a bigger company. There's particularly startups and NGOs, etc. But there's also sometimes very fast turnarounds of very simple things that frankly we shouldn't even want to do, in fact, because it's we're big, we're more focused on the strategic, the bigger projects, etc. We wouldn't necessarily be, we could do it, but it would probably be not very cost efficient. And so that's going to happen. So when then those two brilliant people came with, or particularly Angie Snyder came with that brilliant idea to develop this app, it's an amazing technology advancement, and we believe that that's where the future goes.
You don't worry that it might be a threat to your existing agencies?
No, because for the biggest client majority is startups and NGOs and smaller companies that we wouldn't work for anyway. Secondly, it can even help our agencies as well to do things more cost efficiently.
Okay. And more broadly, are you looking to invest in technology?
Yes.
In terms of improving how agencies operate. Do you think there are more opportunities out there? It does seem like there is technology, but it only really deals with certain aspects of the kind of agency model.
Yeah, I think the good news for us is that it's very much a people business, and there's a lot of things that technology can't replace. But I would always be open for anything that any technology that we could use to make our work more efficient and free the people up to be real strategic consultants. So that's what we'll always be looking at, and particularly in the area of one of my hobby horses in measurement, data and analytics is obviously that's so technology driven. We need to be at the forefront of making good use of that.
Do you see a kind of group-wide measurement analytics solution emerging, or is it still something that is being handled at an agency level?
We definitely work together, but ideally we should be able to come to some industry principles. I would really, really, really like that, and I know there's groups that are working on it. It amazes me how long it takes, unfortunately, and that's a combination of factors as well. But we definitely work together on solutions. That's something that is not agency specific.
Curious to know what role the clients are playing in all this. Do you feel there is more pressure for real metrics, or are they perhaps holding things back?
It's interesting because there is at top level with our clients there is an incredible need for more fact-based return on investment from CMOs who say, you'd get more money if you could prove to me the return on investment more, to we're not going to go here without KPIs and a solid measurement system. But then when it trickles down, we don't have the big advertising budgets, and then very often it's kind of like, oh well, that money for measurement, we might want to put that in activation, which is something that I always ask the agencies to fight, because I've seen so many examples when I was really like in the day-to-day client business. I've seen so many examples where clients would say that, and a year later or half a year later, they would be asked by their CEO what was happening for the money, and they wouldn't have a real solid overview and dashboard, and it comes back to bite you in the behind. So I think so. We really don't want to take an assignment without saying what are the KPIs, and then agree on a way we're going to measure success. And that can be very into even sales performance, or it can be anything up to that point. That depends on how much the client wants to share their data as well with us.
Okay. Now, the kind of lack of robust metrics or industry-wide principles is often, seen as a threat to the industry. I'm curious to know how you view other emerging competitive threats. So, for example, do you see management consultancies as a particular threat to PR agencies?
I'm always looking around the corner. So so I think that you need to do that. So do I see a threat there? Yes. I've seen some of the management consultancies buy up a lot of marketing and communications agencies. So it's a clear direction. Others are less inclined to do so, but yes, I am. In the same way, though, we are going more and more into a consulting direction. If you take our, we've consolidated all the change management expertise under Daggerwing. That is a management consultancy. And so while it is smaller and not at the scale of some of the others, I think there is more and more crossover. So yes, I watch very, very carefully. But it is, what I feel very good about is earned media is a very, very strong specialization that is hard to get your arms around. And I've seen that both with the advertising agencies, media buying agencies, with the management consultancies as well. But you always have to be on the lookout.
What else are you on the lookout for? I mean, are there any other threats that you're seeing that perhaps, I wouldn't say keep you up at night, but are worrying you in terms of the PR industry?
I think it's the old adagio, but it is the quest for talent. We not only fight for talent within our ranks, we do fight for talent with the Googles and the Amazons of this world, particularly in Silicon Valley and in the other upcoming tech hubs. And that is, we need to make sure that we keep ranking as best place to work, with flexibility, with great opportunities and great client opportunities. And that, by the way, also then ties into the collaboration, because our people really love to work together cross-agency on big client challenges, because those are always the big, meaty, strategic ones, and they really, really love to be part of that.
Better parental leave, surely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be a particular challenge in this country.
It is, and we need to look at flexibility across the board. We need to look at flexibility in working hours, because this whole thing, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all integrated, and we need to just grow up with the times.
Okay. How would you characterize the ideal agency CEO?
It's probably one of the most difficult jobs in the world, and I say that seriously, because what you have to have so many different traits. So you have to be a real inspirational leader. You have to be able to attract top talent and motivate that talent and retain the talent. You have to be fantastic with clients. You have to be able to walk in the room, have the C-suite conversations, and in good and bad times. You have to be operationally savvy, because you run a big P&L. So when you're a big agency CEO, and so you need to understand what's going on the financial side, on the operations side, and then you have to be visionary, be ahead, always looking for what's changing in our industry, how we're going to adapt. The change is a constant. If you're not up for change, you're never going to be making a good CEO. So that's it's a big list, and it is, but it is what it takes to run an agency successfully.
Yeah, it's a tall order. I wonder, do you feel that there's enough training that goes into developing those types of leaders?
I think, I think we can always do better. We do have, Omnicom University, which is, and then the regional versions and the big one here in the US, which are leadership trainings. We do other leadership trainings per agency, which we're going to coordinate a little bit more. So we do have a lot of training, but particularly on the operational side, I think we can do a better job. It's just, I know that from my own experience when I came to be the CEO of Porter. I happen to have this weird love of numbers, which is pretty rare for somebody with liberal arts background. But it's a big beast, and you have to get your arms around looking at P&Ls and see where the pain is and what causes the pain. And I do believe that across the board we can do, not only for CEOs but for senior leaders, we should really focus on giving people more tools.
So more numerate.
Yes. Yeah, sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Well, more numerate without losing presumably the EQ.
No, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It is a tough ask. So coming back to the threats you were describing and the things that concern you. You mentioned talent. How much does it concern you, perhaps on the client side, when a big client, like, for example, a Mark Pritchard from P&G, says that your complexity is not our problem to agencies, and we're in a agencies seem to trade in complexity sometimes. They have become such complex organizations in many cases.
Yeah, it shouldn't. And I'm with Mark Pritchard there. I think we are able to offer integrated solutions to clients and give them what I call one throat to choke or one shoulder to pat if things go well. And basically what I used to say when we pitched One Voice to Philips, it's like your laptop. It's easy. You have an Apple. It's easy to use. But the whatever is in there behind it, you don't need to know. You don't need to be worried about it. You need to have one call into the call center, and that's the same thing. That's how we should structure our client offerings, and we can do it, and that's up to us to offer clients a seamless solution.
Do you think clients should take any responsibility for the complexity of their agencies? Because clients themselves are not necessarily the most simple structures.
I think that is absolutely true. We were talking about the complexity at the agency side, but obviously that needs to be reflected in the setup on the client side. And one of the things that we do see, which is really, really, I find that very sad, is quite often not necessarily the right alignment, for example, between marketing and communications. And of course, it's very hard then for us, if we offer a seamless solution, to work that way. But with a good client relationship, you can have those discussions and always strive to improve on both sides. And those clients are massive, and I come from the corporate side as well, and I know how hard it is to make changes.
Sure. And how important do you feel it is that the PR industry is making inroads into the CMO budget? That seems to have been the focus for many agencies for many years now. It hasn't necessarily been realized. And from your perspective, as someone who's worked corporate side as well, do you think it's viable? Do you think it's? I
think we've seen a lot of inroad into different budget across the board, and with the integrated approach and the recognition of CMOs of the power of earned, I've seen a lot of growth there, and I think that's going to continue.
Okay, but I guess it's not necessarily being reflected in the overall numbers. For example, it's not powering overall.
I think that's not a reflection of that particular growth of the integration. That's more a reflection of the overall economy and state of affairs.
Sure, fair enough. So to finish, a couple of questions just on OPRG. Now, was it last year when you merged the firms in 4 European markets?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
It was less than a year ago.
Less than a year.
It was May, June, I think. So you merged your 3 big brands, is that correct?
3 big brands.
So Fleischmann, Hillard, Ketchum and Porter Novelli.
Yes.
Merged in 4 European markets.
Yes.
So for anyone who didn't follow that story, tell us why you made that decision.
Yeah, we do this really, really carefully because we do want our brands to stay strong and they have such a great following by themselves. But in those particular markets, and this was done with the full support of the brands, all of the three brands were small. They were doing their best. I mean, they came out of a terrible economic turmoil. They came out of that well, but they were small, and they couldn't create the scale that was necessarily to pitch with some of their biggest competitors in the markets. I mean, they have network clients, but the biggest part of their revenue comes from local clients still. And we've seen it. We've already, it's less than a year, so I'll be careful. But we've definitely seen new opportunities for the combined teams. It is much nicer for talented people to be part of a bigger play and get access to more bigger opportunities, client opportunities. And B, you are in the market. All of a sudden, in 3 out of the 4 markets, the agency is in the top 5. And in the 4th market, it's in the top 10. So, from being a minor player, now they're in the top playing. They get the equivalent, therefore, for the portion of the RFPs, etc. They're recognized, and it's really paying off really well. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, always, it's not for every market. Absolutely not.
I remember when these changes occurred, there was a lot of talk around the branding.
Yeah.
And how has that developed? Are these firms now known just as Omnicom PR Group, or do they have 3 front doors?
No, they are known as Omnicom PR Group, but obviously there are international clients that have been used to working with one of the brands, and they continue to work with one of the brands if that's what they want. But when they go to market for new opportunities, they go as OPRG.
Okay,
yeah.
That is interesting. Now, I could sit here and just throw different markets at you and ask if you're going to consider doing that in those places.
What I'm going to tell you then.
Perhaps a better way to ask the question then is to ask, presumably you are considering this in other regions as well.
I'm not going to run ahead. I would say that because this process has been a long process, because it's not free of complications. It needs to be really right for the market. It needs to be, the brands need to be a certain small size as well. And there needs to be a strong idea that the market in itself is worth being in, and the combined forces will really, really, really create a strong power. That's not for every market. So will we look at other markets? We continue to look at every market all the time. But it's not for every market, and should we have any more concrete plans, you'll be the first to know.
Would you ever consider consolidating any of your agency brands on a global level, perhaps?
No.
You think the stable of 10? It's more now, isn't it? It was 10, but now I think
I found it so hard as well, because there's a lot of big sub-brands as well that are quite independent from their mothership. So it depends on how you call, but let's say around 10 major brands. So no, I mean, you never should say never, but the brands are so recognized and so strong, and as long as the collaboration is the other path, it's going fine.
Okay.
And never destroy something that's working well.
All right, excellent. Well, Karen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It was great to be with you, Arun.
Yeah, I can't believe it's taken this long to get you onto the echo chamber, but hopefully it won't take so long for your second appearance.
I'll be ready whenever you are.
Okay, excellent. Thank you all.
You've been listening to the Echo Chamber. Brought to you by the Holmes Report and produced by Marketeers. Sponsored by March Communications, connecting innovation and people.